Let me begin by greeting the members of the international panel, albeit from a TV monitor since I'm unable to be with you in person. I also want to thank Dr. Miriam Roskenberger, our chair, for coordinating this gathering and inviting me to participate. While I'm an ADTR from the US, Dr. Berger asked me to speak on dance therapy with children in Sierra Leone. Throughout most of 2005 and 2006, I had the opportunity to work in a remote rural part of that coastal West African country of 5.5 million people, posted there by the Minneapolis-based Center for Victims of Torture, or CVT. I coordinated a trauma alleviation program in the Kailaun district, an area that's still recovering from the atrocities of a brutal war that had started quite nearby in March 1991 and did not come to an end there until January 2002. The war had uprooted between a third and one-half of all Sierra Leoneans. To this day, returnees and those who stayed are engaged in a collective struggle to reconcile with one another and return to normalcy. A brief review of statistics tells the story of Sierra Leone's lagging development and suggests the extent to which the war continues to affect the country's children, who make up just under half of its total population. Current life expectancy in Sierra Leone is 41 years, up from 38 in 2000 when it had the world's lowest. Only 30% of rural dwellers have access to adequate sanitation. The percentage of 5 to 14-year-olds involved in labor is 59. There are some 340,000 orphans under age 18 in Sierra Leone, amounting to more than 6% of the country's total population. Around 48,000 child soldiers under 18, many of them orphaned, were demobilized 5 years ago at the end of the war. Among all nations today, Sierra Leone still has the highest mortality rate for children under 5 years of age. Within this context, my role with CVT was to provide clinical supervision to 24 local trauma counselors, all secondary school graduates whom we recruited and trained. The 24 were divided among 4 sites in what's considered the most devastated part of the country. Together, we worked to address the worst emotional and psychological effects of the war through group and individual therapy and community sensitization. I introduced CVT's paraprofessional counselors in both Sierra Leone and neighboring Liberia to fundamentals of dance movement therapy. The staff embraced DMT as culturally appropriate, and many of them adopted elements of this training into their own self-care programs. My Kailaun team worked to integrate certain DMT principles into treatment agendas for the scores of verbal counseling groups we provided to torture and war trauma survivors of all ages in the district. We also ran 4 time-limited DMT groups with adolescents, for which I served as lead facilitator. One for 14 to 17-year-old males, another for 16 and 17-year-old females, a group made up entirely of former boy combatants aged 14 to 18 during the group, and a final group comprised of 23 and 24-year-old Muslim males, all of whom entered the group during their final year of primary school, and who by their own definition had yet to reach full manhood. Doubtless few of these clients had prior knowledge of psychological counseling. Nonetheless, virtually all of them engaged enthusiastically with their DMT groups, and at the intervention's end acknowledged a group role in improving their overall well-being, in particular by helping alleviate depression and post-traumatic distress. Our staff tracked client self-reports of symptom expression elicited at intake, 1-month, 3, 6, and 12-month intervals. Especially among male DMT clients, these numeric data revealed remarkable improvement through time. Time today does not allow me to describe the progress of these DMT groups in much detail. Instead, I summarize. In organizing treatment plans for groups, we developed rather comprehensive lists of objectives and included in our session agendas various physical exercises chosen to aid in minimizing hyperarousal, promoting relaxation, releasing aggression, reducing sleep disturbances, and promoting grounding as a way of lessening the impact of intrusive recollections. We also designed creative movement activities to help clients integrate their trauma. Most sessions included a quasi-Chasian circle featuring movement to popular music and group improvisation. Our male clients in particular exhibited an unusual readiness to explore movement together in imaginative ways, and with a degree of intimacy that fostered significant growth in group members' capacity to interact meaningfully with others. In sum, the counselors were persuaded that through the DMT process, we were able to meet such ambitious goals as fostering a safe environment in which it was possible to rebuild dignity and trust among a highly traumatized clientele. I close with a description of one activity we called Family Sculptures Before and After the War, which we utilized in all 4 of our DMT groups. Numerous approaches are possible for enabling counseling group participants to represent their wartime experiences through creative nonverbal expressive arts activities. In working with children affected by war, it's vital to offer occasions for symbolizing not only loss, but the memories and experiences that may serve as wells of potential strength and resilience. Certainly, the child's foremost protective resources, particularly in cultures like those of Sierra Leone, where kinship bonds are extended well beyond a nuclear core, is contained in the strength and traditions of the family of origin. This exercise offered children the opportunity to sculpt a statue of their own families as they were prior to the war. Including themselves within the sculpture further allowed these child clients to experience a physical reminder of their attachment to this elemental source of belonging. I derived the exercise from a common device in Western family therapy in which family members physically position one another into 3-dimensional pictures as a way of revealing their perceptions of relational bonds. Similarly, in our DMT groups in Sierra Leone, volunteer participants would arrange a small group of peers into an image of their own pre-war families engaged in a joint activity. We explained at the outset that the volunteers would afterward be called on to depict the family at present, that is, after the war's end. Neither dialogue nor movement was permitted in the statue's presentation before the rest of the group, and this requirement provided the young artists an aesthetic distance meant to shield them from engulfment in bereavement over family losses, a form of distress this embodiment might potentially have evoked. Usually participants began by depicting an idealized image of their harmonious early home life, featuring most often the preparation and eating of a communal meal. In fashioning this first statue and identifying their own place within it, the youths thus enjoyed a chance to reconstitute in their imagination some of the lost warmth of family nurture. Afterwards, they devised the second portrait, that of the present-day family, to the extent that it had survived. Most of the young participants in CVT's groups had been orphaned during the war. Invariably, stark differences were in evidence between the pre-war and post-war configurations. Today's family proved always to have fewer members than had been present in the family before conflict, frequently such that the teenager remained alone living on the street. Ordinarily, the child would station peers depicting other family members face down on the floor as if dead, or hide them from view as if among the unaccounted missing. While verbalization about the process was optional, most participants chose to share stories within the group, explaining in as much detail as they desired what had led to the differences in shape between the first and second images of their family. Typically among CVT's child and adolescent survivors, the sculpting activity thus yielded valuable information about the client's current living situation. Often, significant emotional release occurred as well, in particular, the sharing of sadness or anger over the family's decimation. This commonly led peers to bond with one another as survivors of similar grief and enabled them to begin together to overcome disabling feelings of isolation and loss that had troubled them so deeply and for so long. Thank you.